Hello and welcome to the weekly astrology and spirituality show for week commencing the 12th of July with Alyssa and Patrick Arundell. Now we've got lots to share with you this week, lots to get through, but let's start off as usual with where we are with the Hermetic Wheel. So on the screen you can see that it has moved from the wonderful Three of Cups to the perhaps more challenging Four of Cups.
Yeah, the Four of Cups is definitely more challenging in a lot of ways. We can feel very disconnected from the world when this card comes up. Maybe we don't want to join in. Maybe there's some apathy. We don't know where we're headed in life. We don't know where our direction is. And so that can be really a big challenge for us. And that's the kind of emotion that the Four of Cups really encompasses.
How does this impact on our physical energy then?
Well, we can feel ourselves being very drained, not much lust for life, you know, that rev where we want to get going. So perhaps our inspiration is dwindling a bit with this card. The good thing about this,
what can we gain from
is that if we are feeling like we are in this situation, it's a good time to reflect, to put the brakes on a little bit, to press that restart button and say, okay, you know, this is where I am right now, but it's not where I'm always going to be. So let's not be so hard on ourselves. Just recalibrate a little bit.
And also Mercury, the planet of communication, but also thinking, has moved into the more emotional sign of Cancer and is forging a brilliant and enabling link to Jupiter, also in the watery sign of Pisces, which it governs. So despite the fact that Jupiter's in a retrograde, I think that that particular planetary influence can help us to overcome perhaps the more sluggish feeling that the Four of Cups may create. Also, Venus and Mars are much more liberated this week. They've been in a great alliance in Leo for the whole of this month and the latter part of last month, but they have been impacted by both Saturn and Uranus. And that has made things a bit more discordant. But I think if we can find our passion, like Elisa's saying, if we are finding it difficult to be motivated on the things that we would normally be focusing upon, I think what Venus and Mars in Leo are saying is give ourselves permission to be a bit more playful, to do something that's pleasurable, to do something that's completely different. And that switch of focus and the moment can then re-energize us back on the main strands in our situation. But it is true that in the second half of this week, the Sun and Pluto come into direct opposition. So this is quite a conflicting aspect. If you think about it, the Sun in Cancer is cardinal, very much to do with leadership, but it's to do with those feelings because this sign is governed by the Moon. But Pluto is to do with transformation, but it's in the more material, practical sign of Capricorn, also cardinal, so we can get a bit of a power battle. That power battle could be going on within ourselves between balancing on what we feel we need to be doing pragmatically or we need to be doing in terms of the feeling part of our nature. But I think overall it could point towards some kind of power battle or needing to assert our boundaries with someone who's perhaps been taking us for granted a little bit, but it's also important to be aware of using our power in an appropriate way. Now, as the week draws to a close, on Saturday we do have a quarter moon, and this is in the sign of Libra. So we could find ourselves trying to mediate between two people we're fond of who are not seeing eye to eye. Maybe we are leaning into a situation, being very thoughtful towards someone, but we're not getting much back. And this can be the backdrop influence for the week from Saturday through to the following Friday. So it will provide a backdrop for week commencing the 19th. And it's just at the end of this week. A relationship issue may need some care and delicacy, but the diplomacy of Libra can help no end. We just need to find that balance between that powerful standoff between the Sun and Pluto. Now, in terms of the word of the week, we did have one suggestion, but we're actually going to crack open the word of the day jar that we haven't used for a while, that we used to use on the Daily Show, because there is a story behind why we're doing this, which we'll explain a little more in a while.
Okay, so you're going to dive in and pick...
No, I think I did that last time,
okay.
so I think you should. So I'll hold the chart.
Nice. Okay.
So there you go.
Okay. The word on this card is anxiety on this piece of card. Whoa. Tough one.
Yes.
I think the majority of us in life will at some point suffer from some form of anxiety. I heard anxiety described a few days ago as depression on steroids. And I could actually really relate to that, because anxiety can hold us back from doing many things in life. We can have it for long periods of time, or anxiety can come on in short bursts. Say, for example, we're giving a presentation or a talk, or we're going to an interview. We feel that fear, that anxiety.
But also we have some systems within our body, which means that, for example, if we're about to cross a road and we don't see a car coming and then suddenly we realise it's there, the brain is protecting us by giving us a shot of adrenaline to make sure that we react swiftly to that threat.
And also, you know, like you were saying, it's very physical, because our brains are geared towards the negative. That's how we survived all these years, by looking out for predators or things like that. So we have to kind of force ourselves to be positive in some ways. Now, if we were living thousands of years ago, getting chased by a saber-tooth tiger or something, we would have those short bursts of anxiety. It's when it is prolonged that it can really start to do us some trouble, and we may seek some help or treatment or therapies or something.
So in a physical sense, this is where we get too much cortisol. We actually get stuck between flight and fight, and therefore our bodies in a physical sense almost become conditioned to too much adrenaline and cortisol, and that actually can poison us in a way. So in terms of the emotional implications of anxiety, I have struggled a lot with anxiety in my life, and one of the prevailing reactions that I've had from my family is one of difficulty to understand it. In fact, certain members of my family, siblings, have never ever had a proper conversation with me about my anxiety, ever. They just will not talk to me, or have not been able to talk to me about it. And for someone who's very much an empathizer, as I am, I've found that very, very difficult. And I think maybe some of their conditioning was, well, I've suffered with anxiety, I had to deal with it myself, which is one of the things Prince Harry was kind of saying, that he'd been told within the royal family. So I haven't watched the documentary he did with Oprah Winfrey, but I understand from the press reports that he found it quite extraordinary that the feedback he got with his stress and depression was, well, I've had that as well, you just got to deal with it. So that was something that I could really relate to. So I do think that we've got some people in the world, in terms of my experience, who don't actually want to tackle the concept of anxiety, maybe because they've got fears about mental health themselves, or they feel that you're weak, or they feel that you're an attention seeker, which again I think has been one of the subtexts that's gone on in my family group. I've never spoken about this publicly ever before, and it's been very difficult to come to terms with their response to that, because obviously I'm in my early 60s. So if I say to you that one of my siblings, both my siblings had suffered with anxiety, but neither of them have had a conversation with me about it properly, ever, that's quite extraordinary, isn't it? Because they were very dismissive. Because from their viewpoint, it was something that they either thought that I was seeking attention for, they didn't have space for, they found it fearful, they feel I should deal with it myself. It's a very hostile way to try to deal with anxiety. So if we're fortunate enough to have people around us, like I've had with my extended family, who are amazing, there's not many of them, but they're absolutely brilliant people who have been able to listen. That's been critical to me dealing with anxiety, but it has been a massive part of my life, and Elise has been very, very understanding about it. So there's a big confession there, to be honest, So how do we deal with anxiety? Well, certainly in a physical context, we can make sure that our diet is right, because I think a lot of what drove my health issues was a selective diet. You know, as a vegetarian for 45 years, it's wonderful to be very noble towards animals. I made that decision at 15 when there wasn't very much information out there. But I think we can starve ourselves of nutrients very easily. You know, choline is one to do with brain health. You could have a drop in B12 or protein. There may be a drop in fats, micronutrients, all sorts of things that we can gain from whole foods that perhaps we can't even gain from supplementation quite in the same way. So I would say definitely to make sure that we eat well, and obviously also to make sure that we sleep well. So if you're an insomniac, then anxiety gets driven even more, because you never have the opportunity to switch out of that stuck point within the middle of fight and flight. So you're just constantly generating extra adrenaline. So over a long period of time, your body, the physical state of your body can change hugely. And I don't think that's something that's well known about depression or anxiety. I think they're both quite physical illnesses, even if the roots of them might in some ways be psychological or emotional or spiritual. Some of it definitely can be physical.
And I really agree with that.
So in terms of, if you want to share any of your experiences underneath here, or write to me directly to interact with myself or Elisa, please feel very welcome to do so. But anxiety also, in a more, perhaps a more spiritual context, could be said to be fear of the opposite of hope, in a way, if you like. So if we want to try to push back, master things, move forwards, even if we have to still be very cautious about the environment that we put ourselves in, or the social situations we put ourselves in, if we suffer with social anxiety, well, I do feel that if we can see hope in situations, then that can be very helpful in a more spiritual context.
Definitely.
What about yourself? Can you see any other?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes with anxiety, it can be very scary when you very first have anxiety and you never really had it before. Because
so a panic attack.
A panic attack. I had my first panic attack, I think, when I was about 23. Never had it before. It was a perfectly sunny day. I was getting the bus to go to see a chiropractor because I'd been in a car accident previous, and I just had a panic attack at the bus stop. I had to come home. I didn't know what was going on with me. I thought, why can't I breathe?
Terrifying
What is going on?
things.
It's scary, and you're not making it happen. You know, I just didn't expect it to happen, and I realised now that I was suffering with a lot of overwhelm at that time, juggling work, juggling bereavements, juggling
and an
many
accident
different
can
things.
also bring things up, because
Definitely.
some of the things that I've experienced have been after I had a head-on collision with a lorry once, which sounds a bit worse than it was, but it was a glancing blow on a corner. The car was badly affected by it, but yeah, these things, these shocks to the system can bring up. You can very often hear stories of people who might be concertina at, say, some traffic lights, and suddenly all this stuff from the past will come up that had been, you know, as far as they were concerned, completely resolved. So,
and usually it's when people are very strong. Actually, that's what I've noticed, because when you're dealing with the pains or the traumas that you're going through at that time, you're dealing with it. It's afterwards when it stops, when it's maybe nothing's happening, but it all does come up, and it's because that inner strength has had to be going for so long without a break.
I think that's brilliant.
Then it catches up. So you're never a weak person to have anxiety. In fact, the strongest people I know have.
Yeah, I think people who are more at ease with their timidity are probably the people who will least likely have panic attacks, because they're not feeling some kind of need to conform to some kind of higher standard. Clearly there was some kind of emotional deficit within my family. My mum was a very needy person, to be honest. I loved her to bits, supported her the best I could, but she was very focused on what she wasn't getting from situations. So that creates a kind of a lack that may have gone out to other people, and then other people may have reacted in the way they did because they were fighting for their own survival and didn't fill the space. or hadn't developed that empathy, which I think is so important. So it is a complex subject. And of course, the other thing is that some people might suffer from anxiety because they find this modern world that we live in just crazy. They don't like concrete, they don't like noise, they don't like oodles of traffic or being on planes, because these are all contrived environments. They're not natural. And if genetically you're someone who was perhaps reared in the country or in very peaceful locations, or your horoscope points towards being someone who needs a degree of tranquility, then clearly the modern world, because it's so constantly overstimulated, is not necessarily going to be very good for all of us, where some people may thrive on those things. So we're all very, very different within some quite common commonalities that some of us all have. We all need to eat, we all need to drink, we all need to sleep, but some people have a different appetite or a different level to deal with different types of stresses. Like there are some stresses that I dealt with in my life that I've told people about, and they're kind of like, oh my word, how did you deal with that? And I didn't actually find it so difficult. Taking a lot of responsibility at work, I didn't really find it that difficult. So everyone has different anxieties. I think that's another thing to recognise.
Definitely. Good conversation.
Now, in terms of the birthday winner for this week, it is actually Nick H, who will know who he is. Now, obviously, we're trying to be a bit more confidential. Nick also sent in a word for the week. Sorry, Nick, you can't have your chart read and have your word used as well. Now, Nick's birthday was actually last week. There was no one who entered this week for week commencing the 12th with their birthday details. Thank you for Ryan also for writing in on last week's show and thanking us for what we did on that. So if you would like your solar return looked at for the year ahead, and your birthday is from week commencing the 9th of July through to the, what would it be? 19th, sorry, through to the 23rd, would it? Please drop us your time, date and place of birth and where you're living now, and I'll be happy to look at it. But for this week, we've got to use Nick because he put his details down. So I've worked with Nick in the past, to be honest, and Nick's chart is lovely. A very caring person, and a big emphasis on a need to find a balance really between what he does in his work and professional situation. But there are some lovely energies here. We've got Jupiter in a fantastic sextile to Mars, and also the moon is very close to Eros in the sign of Aries. So that gives Nick obviously a degree of fire, but his sun is actually in the sign of Cancer. So it's very close to the fixed star Sirius. So that's gorgeous, Nick. So it means the brightest star in the sky shines in your sector of friendship. So I think you will always be someone who will be able to connect well to others, but I do think your work is important to you. Now, your midpoint is also very close to Jupiter in the 9th house. So I think philosophy, history, travel, knowledge, all those things will always be something that you have a great appreciation for. Now, in terms of your solar return, again, I don't give myself too much time to look at things. You have got the moon right at the top of your chart in the 10th house in Gemini. So, and also you have the midpoint on this solar return in Gemini, and it's conjunct Mercury, the ruler of Gemini. But when this happened on your birthday, there was an exact square between Mercury and Jupiter, which was being repeated, and I mentioned that just a little while ago. So I think for you, your focus is going to be on work, but I think there could be potentially some people that you encounter professionally who don't give you much clarity about what the terms and conditions or the frameworks are that you need to work within. And that's not to say you can't get it, because your desire to make progress is going to be very strong, and your ability to relate to people in a very sensitive way is also beautifully emphasized. But I would just say that it is going to be important to make sure that whatever jobs are offered, you really have those T's and C's nailed down in a very clear way to give you the confidence to enter into any relationship professionally. But you do have Venus and Mars, as I mentioned at the start of this show. They're in Leo, but they're in your 12th house and they're quite close together. Maybe someone has a secret admiration for you, Nick, and I think over the next year, don't be surprised if you get to know someone in a low-key way. It may even be a clandestine relationship, I'd go as far as saying, where the person is very charismatic, but they want to keep it confidential to begin with. I don't think you will so much from what I know of you, but that's just something that gives you a bit of a flavour. And you do have Jupiter, it's in the 6th house, good for work. You have Saturn there as well, but Jupiter is very, very near to your 7th house cusp. So I do think you can forge a positive relationship at work this year, as long as you make sure the T's and C's are crystal clear on any position that you're offered. So that's a little bit of a flavour of that. If you would like to get your free daily horoscope fired directly to your device each morning, please see the link beneath this video. If you'd like to subscribe to our channel, we'd be very honoured. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to have a reading with Alyssa or myself, please see the links below where you can check out our testimonials. It will be an absolute pleasure. Now, we've yet to have the modality of the week in terms of another card. And I think you're going for the angel therapy.
Yes, angel therapy. So this will be a nice way to round off our show. I will just answer your question, Nick. I will allow that.
Yes.
You asked me where I got my necklace from.
So strict on you, Nick. Gosh.
I wish I could say it was from some like really quirky independent store, but it was from Claire's Accessories. So there we go.
Well, there's a boost for Claire's Accessories.
Here's a plug. They might become a sponsor. Who knows? Right. Okay. You can pick one today because I picked the cookie jar.
That's very noble of you.
You're welcome.
I'm on dinner duty today.
You are. Ooh,
singing and dancing.
Singing and dancing.
Very Venus conjunct Mars in Leo.
This is lovely. It says here, express yourself and awaken your senses through the magical power of music and movement. Music and movement are so important in our lives. This is the way we used to communicate. Eons ago, when we lived in caves before we had language, it was done through music, through dance. That's how stories were passed down and communication happened. So it's very innate in human beings to have that, and so I think having that, putting on some tunes, maybe when you cook the dinner, you could.
Yeah, you tend to put the music on very loud, don't you?
I do.
We do tend to write quite a few little ditties, though.
Yes.
The ditty this week is, "Oh, Mrs. Frobisher, da 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 da." It's sort of like 30s type style.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da,
Some parts
da,
of the
da,
song
da.
are a bit rude, though.
Yeah.
A
bit rude.
But we do like writing little jingles. I think that could be another career option.
Yes, we think in a former life we could have been on Rainbow, actually.
Yes, definitely. Especially because I'm donning my dungarees today.
Oh, before we go, we must tell you about Merlin. So, in the village pond, we have found this. We didn't know what it was because there's this bird there, and it's a beautiful village pond in the village. And there's all these kind of ducks there, the sort of ones that you might imagine would be in the UK, and some that are a little different. But this bird was very different, and it almost had the beak or head of a turkey. But you did your...
Yeah, I did my research, and apparently it's of a Canadian origin. It's called a Muscovich. They're very much found in Russia as well. Not often in Europe, so...
Why is that, Comrade?
Not sure how Comrade got to Wales, but he's very, very beautiful. He's got very human eyes, and we have developed... I'll pop a picture of Merlin on the screen.
We think Merlin's suffering from loneliness.
Yeah, so...
Because he's got no one else to talk to. All the other ducks are all sort of congregating.
Yeah.
He's not a mixer and a mingler.
No, he's not. And we're really just trying to make good friends with him, and hopefully he'll...
So every time we go down, we have a chat, and he does seem to look round.
Probably
thinks, "Oh, those people over there, they're really silly."
Yeah, he's undercover. blowing his cover here. But no, yeah, that's Merlin, and we're very, very fond of him.
Yeah, and thank you for all your good wishes about our move. I have had a flare with rheumatoid arthritis this week, which has actually been very painful. But it does seem to be a little bit better today. I mean, obviously it's been, it's a hugely stressful thing to do, and it's quite a unique situation because all the possessions, and I mean all the possessions, apart from a few very personal things, have all been left here. So we've basically been steptoe and daughter. Harold! Father, you that's it, odds man. So, and there's some lovely things here which we're very grateful for, but unfortunately the house has just been jammed full of stuff for absolutely ions. I think we got something like 200 candles nearly that we're going to take round to the church this week. So yeah, a lot of clearing been going on. So we haven't really sort of been able to sort of settle in the way one would normally think. But we have been down to the beach a few times, haven't we?
We have. We've had one swim. We've met some lovely jellyfish. And I'm hoping that the weather in the UK gets a little bit better by the end of the week, and so we
Well,
can...
it wouldn't be hard because it's absolutely pelting today. Yeah, so from tales of Muscovich, of ducks called Merlin, of millions of candles, not millions, slight exaggeration, and trying to push back on that Four of Cups, making sure we maintain our boundaries on that opposition between the Sun and Pluto if someone tries to be unfair, but also we need to hold ourselves to the highest account too, and if we can, have some play at some time.
Yay. So until we speak again next week, it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.